Hey, what's up, Liron here. Today I'm going to share with you a very unique technique or approach where I'm going to be using watercolor and gouache almost interchangeably to paint this beautiful cityscape from our last visit to Manhattan. I'm going to make this listenable. I'm going to talk a bit about our experience there also. So if you have an hour or so, you just want to listen to me in the background, it's going to be fun. But we'll also learn how to paint this scene, and I haven't cut out anything. So you're going to see almost the entire process. Maybe I cut out like a really long specific mixing session, but that's fine. So I love to tackle these subjects with the thing that interests me the most and kind of I know is going to be easy for me to start with. In this example, it's this car. I have a good vision for that rear windshield, for the wipers, for the windows, for everything. I kind of have a feel of how I want to express them. And I have a lot of leftover just gouache on the top part of my palette from the recent Imperial bar painting that I covered in the previous video. And what makes this so fun is I can just mix the two. So check it out. So far, I've been putting a bit of gray and a bit of blue. My next move is to dip into that opaque paint, and this is still considered transparent media. Gouache is still considered that. By the way, if you're submitting your paintings to any painting exhibitions and stuff like that, usually they accept gouache too, so just know. But this to me is more like a mixed wet media painting. I love wet media. I'm not going to give up on it. I just love the way the gouache looks. Check it out. It just has this milkiness to it that I really enjoy, and it's very useful, by the way. A lot of, I think Chen Chung Wei uses it a lot. I think Misol Bu also uses it a lot of opaque paints, just almost interchangeably. Could be watercolor too. It doesn't really matter. It's very similar. So I'm moving onto the right side of the car with a bit of this beautiful lilac-y violet color that I really enjoy. It feels like it gets warmer, but not fully warm, right? Putting in the license plate with, once again, a bit of opaque yellow or yellow mixed with an opaque white. It's whatever I have left on the palette again. I'm putting in, look at this beautiful color for the taillights. This is actually a color scheme I'd love to play around with a little more in the future. Make a full painting based on that. With these gentle reds and yellows and blues and lilacs that I really enjoy. Now, one thing I do want to achieve in this painting is to get most of the details down the first go. So we're going to push the darks to be darker here, okay? The timing is perfect. This has been sitting for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and it's very wet paint. I start very wet. Paper's dry, but I'm starting with very wet paint, and this is going to be hopefully a masterclass in just overall composition and building of the painting. Not that I couldn't have done a lot of things better. Actually learned quite a lot from this one. But check it out. I'm going to move onto the darks and gradually darken what I have there as we make our way to the tires and the really dark spots. This scene is from our, I think it was like our third day in Manhattan. This is around Central Park. I believe this is the Upper East Side, because we took the metro to the Upper West Side, then we crossed the park. So I'm not sure if it's before we crossed, after we crossed. Actually put the picture in ChatGPT, and it told me it's on the Upper East Side. So I'll trust that. Maybe it got it right. Usually it's really good. And by the way, if you didn't know, you put a picture in ChatGPT, ask where is that, and it can tell. It's pretty scary, actually. So yeah, and it was a beautiful day. The main thing, by the way, that attracted me to this scene and what I want to explore in future paintings of New York and Manhattan is that smoke, that steam coming from the underground. Absolutely love it. I would love to see if I can paint it even more directly, more loosely. That's my goal for the next paintings in this kind of a series that I'm going to be working on. Actually, I think right after we finish this, I'm going to paint another one. Don't know if I'll film it, but I will paint it. Now, here's the thing. So far, this is perfect. To me, I've done a perfect job with this car. This is finalized pretty much. Some parts of the painting, I think I could have done, again, a better job, but this car, if you want an example of what I consider a perfect wash, it's what you see here on paper going on right now. I want to introduce you to a concept I talked about before, and that is squeezing the most out of the lemon while the wash is still wet. While this area is still wet, I can do so much. And I can, by the way, spray some water, as I have in the beginning of the process. I sprayed some water on paper, not pre-wetting, but just loosening up the washes. Because once I put a wash, it's going to have some soft edges. Not all of them, some of them, and it gives this beautiful sense of flow. So just a fun little thing to try. If you feel like the painting is stale usually and your first wash is very overworked and kind of constricted, just spray some water on the paper. It will force the paint to move. So it's a fun thing to try out. Now, this, by the way, this highlight is key. I want to make sure I preserve it because it's going to have this loose, blurry edge. So you see I'm using a bit of water on the red, and I'm going to do the same for the blue, by the way. I'm not merging it into the white of the paper there, the highlight, because that will erase the highlight. I'm using the water on the blue and red around the highlight. You want to be very mindful of these things, because usually if you try to blend an edge where you place water, the edge is going to move, the color is going to move there, the paint is going to move. So if you don't want to move it somewhere, don't put water there and connect it. Put water on the existing wash. Don't extend it if you don't need to. And it's one of those things you learn just from experience and experimenting, honestly, which is, I think, the best way to learn. This here, again, I don't have a technique for painting gouache and watercolor. I have no such thing, right? I don't have a process that I'm used to doing. This is me exploring the idea of just introducing a bunch of opaque paints, which I would love to continue playing around with in the future. See this beautiful, beautiful opaque paint, and the paint moves into it, kind of to give the feeling of highlight from the ground. So I think the best way to really grow in your own style and in your own approach and technique is experimentation. It's throwing yourself in the water. It's going to be crap at first. I'll have to show you a couple of paintings that I did like 7 years ago, when I started trying to break loose of my more tight painting. It's night and day. It really is. And when I started, I was really, really bad at it. Just know, this is like a root beer, non-alcohol beer, what I'm drinking. We call it bira nesher. So I don't know how you would call it in English. I think it's just root beer. So I'm working the area while it's still wet. Okay? I'm not constrained to the colors I'm seeing. I'm going with the feel again, but I am continuing to enhance the area until I'm 100% happy with it. Now, what I recognize when I look at it is a little a combination of cool and warm. The top is a little cooler, the bottom's a little warmer because of that reflection from the ground. Take note of what I just said. The ground feels a little warm. I went too cool later, and then I warm it up. And you'll see how you can fix mistakes. A lot of things you think you messed up, you can fix with just another little glaze. Sometimes that's all it takes sometimes. Now, as I mentioned, this is quite a long process, so bear with me. Sit back, relax. A lot of people have asked me how New York was. It's been great. I will make a separate video on the AWS, American Watercolor Society exhibition. It's been a great experience. I'll do a video and talk a bit about it. I'll show you some pics too. Zooming out, spraying on the paper. Do you see the mist? I'm misting it with water. I want to loosen it up a bit. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the school bus. By the way, the school bus is a strong indicator that this is Fifth Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, close to the museums area, because that's usually where you find all of these school buses coming to tours in the Met and other museums. So it's been great. It's been really fun. Manhattan, we love the city. We do really low-key vacations in terms of like how we don't cram the schedule. We don't have 1,000 things to see. We enjoy the day-to-day life, kind of sitting down somewhere and eating, or just having a good time. We did watch a couple of plays, of course, last time. Now with the baby, it was a bit different, but but mostly we just enjoy the day-to-day and kind of sightseeing in some museums. We don't do anything too crazy or too much attractions. Sometimes we'll just, walk around, find something interesting to look at, find an interesting food festival as a street, something like that. So it's been really, really great. And I think it was a nice the exhibition was a nice way to spice it up, add something more a bit different, right? Work-related. Had a business meeting that was really fun. It's been a really good experience, very different with a baby, of course. A little more of it revolves around a baby, making sure, food and sleep and all of that is covered. It was hard to eat together because it's always something like the baby's crying as soon as we start eating, wanting to eat. But yeah, it's been great overall, and I really hope to do the exact same thing next year if the AWS accept my painting next time. And you can kind of guess probably which painting I'm going to submit. I know which one it'll be, unless I paint something better by the time submission date arrives. By the way, a lot of you should submit your watercolors because you're better than you think. People send me paintings all the time, ask for my opinion. A lot of people, usually the ones that are a little insecure, like, yeah, maybe in the future I'll send a painting. A lot of these people are, I think, could be accepted. I've seen paintings the same kind of level of finish as a lot of paintings you sent me. So just know. I'm adding competition for myself, but I mean, it's fine. One thing, by the way, I'm mindful of with this bus, you see the tree? The tree is in front of it. We can wait for the bus to dry and then add the tree, or we can, on the side of the tree that's shadowy, add the color of the tree and have it merge a bit with the bus. It's one of those things that look really good because it's a contrast of edges. So you get a smooth edge where the tree touches physically on paper the bus, and then a hard edge in the rest of the tree. So I don't know, it's the kind of thing I really enjoy doing. And check out how that yellow that we have, overall yellow-orange, works really well with the existing blues and lilacs, right? If you keep the colors very basic and you just use a few, the harmony almost always just ends up working. So, you know, simplicity, in the beginning at least, it's a lifesaver. If you enjoy that kind of a thing in your advanced days in watercolor, you keep at it. I really enjoy it, so that's how I work. Sometimes I'll be, you know, I'll have a whimsical one where I use more colors, but for the most part, pretty straightforward, you know, 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds. That's usually what I use. I enjoy colors that have a feeling of just familiarity. They belong to one another, which I really, really like. So if you want to hear some of my thoughts, I will make, again, a separate video on the exhibition, AWS. So I submitted a painting called Edna. By the way, look at this beautiful contrast. Strong, dark, and light. I love that kind of a thing. And there's a bit of opaque paint on the right side of the bus. One more thing to note, by the way, the right side of the bus is a more neutral gray yellow, right? It's a little hidden from the sunlight. It's a little more muted. It has more reflected light from all sorts of different areas. So it's just, there's a bit more blue and red in it. That's how you do it. Now, if you notice an object, 3D object, where a part of it is more exposed to the light, that part usually will have a more vibrant, true color, whereas the part that's in the shadow, the true color is going to be obscured by different light and shadow conditions. So I submitted Edna to the 158th exhibition of the American Watercolor Society. It's said to be one that's tough to be accepted to. That's what I heard from many people. It's my first time submitting to the annual exhibition. They also have an online one, which I submitted to once and was not accepted. But to be honest, I didn't know, I hoped it would be accepted, but I kind of saved the better painting for the annual exhibition. Next time I won't make that mistake. I already submitted, actually, something really good. Hopefully it's accepted. But yeah, it's the annual exhibition, the 158th, is the one when you exhibit 3 times. You are able to add AWS to your signature. So you become a signature member, which I hope to become one day. So the event itself was very professional. The reception day was great. Everything was on point. You know, the food and the drinks. I came after eating. I was so full I couldn't even look at food, but, you know, whatever. The paintings were organized beautifully. Mine was a pretty nice, prominent spot. It's smaller painting, too, than most of the paintings there. Next time it's going to be a larger one, hopefully. But yeah, it was just a great experience. Got to meet some people. Met a couple of people who watched the channel too. Met a fan, a supporter on Patreon. Super grateful for that. Met someone who recognized me from YouTube but didn't know my name. That's always fun. Just goes to show you, you know, how even within this small watercolor community, still in the grand scheme of things, no one knows who I am. It's so funny because it's a bit of a different one from the online watercolor community, right? It's other artists, people who submit to exhibitions, they don't necessarily watch as many videos, so, you know. And often people see you, but they don't recognize you immediately, which is funny too. We had that happen as well. So great experience. Was really happy about it. And I'll make, again, a dedicated video. I'll show you the pictures. I'll show you my painting. I'll talk a bit about the dinner, which was really good. Now, back to the painting process. If you look at this bus, here we go, connecting to the tree. The bus is still wet, and I'm trying to do this in one go. Remember what I said, if you don't lift the brush while you do wet and wet or wet next to wet, the paint is not going to move as much. So I really try to do this just in one go to have it merge. It's something that you won't necessarily notice right now, but the tree and the bus have merged. They have merged a bit. The edge is not perfectly sharp, and there is no gap, which often happens too, right? If you just do a negative painting around the tree, and then you add shadows. Sometimes there's a white gap. Here we have a white gap, but it's on the highlight side. That's actually fine. That's intentional. I did add a bit of value to it, but it's still intentional. The right side has started to merge. One more thing you'll notice is the bus connects to that whatever trash can to the side. I think it's a trash can. The tires of the bus are dark. The trash can is dark. It's all connected. Okay, that's the kind of connections that I really enjoy, and I enjoy making them. You don't have to connect everything. Again, I connected the tree and the trash can, but the cars are pretty much separate, right? The cars and the bus and the cars from each other are separate. This taxi that I'm painting in the yellow taxi is separate. It's sometimes just a matter of logistics. Like, did I make it in time to connect? And if I have, do I want to connect them? And if I do, I'll connect. And if I haven't, I won't. And if I wanted to, but I missed the timing, no big deal. We'll solve it in the next wash, okay? So at this stage, there is no such thing as a mistake. Just trust me. Right now, this painting it has all potential. All doors are still open, okay? It's like a teenager who still hasn't really done much in their life. They can do whatever they want, right? This is not an 88-year-old man who can still do a lot. It's a teenager who still has a lot of doors open and a long what do you call that? A runway, right? And again, even when you're 88, you can do a lot. I have a lot of followers in their 70s and even 80s who always tell me I finally got back to art. I'm finally painting how I want to paint. So it's, I'll hopefully paint till I'm 100 plus, if I live that long, hopefully. So yeah, taxi, putting it all in. And now we're pretty much done with the part that I was really compelled to paint first. Onto the sky. So you haven't seen all of the mixing. I put in phthalo blue, which is just a straightforward blue I like, but I added designer's gouache. So this is a white gouache, permanent white, by Winsor & Newton, and you can see it to the left. It's called designer's gouache. It has a lot of colors. One of them is permanent white, which is what I added. I like how Andy Evenson described doing this. He said it takes the edge off the color in a good way. So sometimes how French ultramarine especially is so prone to looking generic and boring because it's so often used straight out of the tube. When you add a bit of a white to it, it just makes it a little more opaque, a little more unique. And that's the kind of thing I was going after, and I really like the way this color looks. Now, with skies, what I found is I would often obsess about matching the value of the sky and having it as dark as it needs to be. But what I found out was there's a lot of leeway in terms of how accurate the sky needs to be and how dark or light. Here we zoomed out so you can see the entire reference, by the way. And often you can go too dark on the sky, but if you go too light, it won't interrupt the impression. So I think Joseph Zbukvich called the sky the eye of the painting. It's like if you were to paint a portrait, but it's a cityscape, the eyes are the skies. It's the eyes of a portrait. And I find that to be a great way of phrasing it. He's right. So what ends up happening is if you darken the sky too much, even if you match the value, sometimes it still doesn't look as good. It shuts off the light, the sense of light. The only exception is when you paint a scene where it's very important for the sky to be dark enough because you want to contrast the lights of the scene. This isn't one of them. The lights are fine. I don't need the sky to show them. Okay, so just something to have in mind. You can look back at some of your paintings and ask yourself, did I paint them too dark? And maybe you'll be surprised and you'll discover something new. Maybe you like them the way they are. And by the way, it could be an artistic statement. Of course, again, in the right context, a dark sky, even if it's darker than the reference photo, can be a really strong artistic statement, but it comes in the full context of how you painted the rest of the scene. For those who kind of paint like me in a way, and it's this kind of a scene, it's very bright, I find that you don't want to go too dark. And taking the edge off the blue helps to not make it too tacky or too cliche, which is really important. One more thing to have in mind is where shapes end. So you'll notice how the trees end with this fence to the left that I'm painting right now, just a it's not a fence, it's like a wall that goes around Central Park, and there's some stairs you can go down. But what you want to really pay attention to is what happens in those areas where the final dark details meet the light ground. And this is exactly what I'm going to do here right now. I'm going to start painting them, extending that brown wash of the trees that isn't its final darkness. It's going to be darker later on. But you'll notice I'm working very light because I know how challenging these areas can be. There's a lot of small details there. Sometimes you're better off winging it and almost inventing stuff instead of trying to paint every detail you see, because it's much harder. I'm keeping it light because I know how important that bit is of showing that contrast, right? Where the shape ends and where another shape begins. And these are the two largest shapes of the painting. Remember that. The ground and the sky. It's probably the two largest shapes. There's the buildings on the right and the trees. They're pretty large too, but this is really the two largest shapes, probably are very prominent ones. And you want to make sure the meeting point works. Okay, so you see there's this another school bus, and there's this ice cream or whatever truck, or maybe it's a gyro, I don't know how you pronounce it, gyros, I don't know, truck, food truck. You want to be mindful of that, where one shape ends and another begins. One more thing you'll note is that smoke, that steam that I'm so fascinated by. This is a key part, another key part of the painting process. I want to make sure it looks right. So it's smooth edged, of course, because it's steam. It goes a little darker the further it goes to the left. And it's not paper white. If you really carefully observe it, it's mostly gray. We're going to tackle that later on with opaque paint because it's going to be fun. Not because we missed the highlights. I'm actually preserving them really well in that area. It's because I wanted to make it a little more gray and a little less white. You'll see. Now, this is another area where a large shape meets the ground. So you want to be mindful of that. Again, all of these shapes. Sometimes, talked about this before, what do I use washes for? What is a wash used for? Why do I decide to paint this right now in this wash? Sometimes the goal of a wash is not to bring in the final details. It's not even to bring some details. It's to help me prepare for the next wash. So what I'm doing is I'm going to paint over everything that needs to be darker or that isn't the ground. And I'm just going to cover it. Whether I'm accurate or not, I'm going to map it out for myself so that I know for the next wash where to paint it. Very often, that's how I think about the first wash. It's a roadmap for the next washes or any given wash, right? The second wash could be a roadmap for the third wash. Sometimes you need a bit of a lead in, something to help you orient yourself in the scene. Look at this, a bit of orange and opaque yellow. For the face and skin tones. I love that kind of a color. Sometimes a wash's goal is to help you orient yourself in the next wash, especially if you have a very strong, prominent wash that's also dark. And I'm sure you've gone through this. You have a large area to cover with very dark paint. Guess what? You aren't able to get it to flow. It doesn't flow. It doesn't look good. It looks patchy, it dried on you, there's undesired effects, right? So what you do is you remove some of the struggle of figuring out where to paint so you can paint faster. How do you do that? By painting a thinner wash where the flow is better, where it's easier to get an even wash. And then the next wash, you don't have to think, okay, is this a part of this wash or not? Because, a wash is large like the sky. You know where the sky is, but where do they end? Do they end where the building starts? Do they end where the foliage begins? A lot of these shapes are very complex. They're very challenging, and you want to make sure that you know where you paint as a part of the process. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you know, you can kind of think fast on your feet, but I find that just understanding what you're going to paint helps, whether you want to use it or disregard it. Okay? Blow my nose for a second here. People. We're adding people to the scene. This will add movement. I find that it is an important element. And I find that often it's fun to just focus on the people in the scene. This time, however, they're really secondary. To me, the main feature of this scene is the smoke, and I would say the bus and the car there to the left. To me, that's the most important thing. Now, one more big element that is very often overlooked is the ground, because the ground is usually it's perceived as what's left behind often in these scenes, right? I'm leaving it behind. I'm painting the rest of the details. But it's very, for watercolorists especially, It's very easy to look at the ground like that, like the afterthought, like the thing that you then fill in. I'm going to show you how I mess up the ground later on. And also these people, they're not going to be dark enough. I'll have to darken them. I'll have to basically increase the contrast between the people and the ground. You have a couple of ways of doing it. Had I left this as is, not darken the ground, the contrast would be right. But once you darken the ground, you'll need to darken the people too. That's how it works. So I go too dark on the ground and I'm going to lighten it up. We're going to paint the ground like an oil painter would physically go there and paint the highlights. Okay. So it's going to be a fun, I think, little learning experience too. Now, again, remember what I said. While the shape is wet, you can work it and rework it. She has this cream-colored or gray-colored jacket over some dark clothes. I want to make sure I make that separation. I used a lot of opaque paints for her hair, for the skin tone, as I mentioned earlier, and for that coat. I'm using black for just the dark details. It's a black watercolor. She does have sunglasses on. It's pretty vague, but it's important to look right. Okay, I just wanted to look right from afar. Skin tone wasn't dark enough. I'm coming back, and I'm going to lighten it up in a second. Don't worry. Now, often I like to really take my time with people and just make sure it looks right. You see me constantly reworking. See, I'm lifting a bit because it was too dark, right? Now it's light enough. But then I want to bring back the sunglasses, so I'm going to indicate a hint of them. Hopefully I will. I wanted to say a word about the black color I'm using. This is... I forgot actually what it is. It's the one that granulates. It's not neutral tint. So just know. I can go ahead and check or maybe add a label later. Remind me if I forget in a comment because I will most likely forget. Which one was it? The one that granulates. You know which one I'm talking about. Because I mentioned it in a couple of videos. So it can lead to some interesting effects. You can see it on the guy on the left. The guy with the scarf. But in any case, in this painting, the people are kept vague, which is good. That's kind of how I wanted it to be. Now, this is another pretty prominent shape, right? It contrasts with the ground. So I'm really establishing that brick wall. And I'm basically just painting it into existence. I don't see this as a coloring book. I see this as literally painting it into existence. Now, this is not done in stages because there's no need to. My phone? Yeah, okay. Because there's no need to. And it plays a very important role of creating the sense of perspective, of pulling you into the scene. Because right now we have the cars, the bus on the left. That's kind of tunneling your vision. But this is going to tunnel your vision from the right. And it's very important to be mindful of that, to be aware of the different, and I'm going just putting in the dark shadow in one go. It's important to be mindful of the things that lead the viewer's eye. It's not really a science, it's composition as well. It's not really a science. It's more of an experience, matter of experience and taste. So if anything, go ahead and develop your taste. You know, try it out. See if very often I'll paint something and I've done everything right and I still don't like the result. Why? Because it just didn't speak to me the way I hoped it would. That can happen often. So if that's the case, that is perfectly fine. You learn from that experience, you move on. Sometimes you'll have a really strong vision for a scene. You'll get it really right the first time. It's going to all flow and come out of you. But sometimes it's not the case, and that is fine. But what happens is the more you explore and learn what you love, the more you'll figure out what the compositional means you enjoy using. Whether it's, like this example, channeling and tunneling the viewer's eyes towards the center using perspective, which is just basically painting this accurately, drawing and painting accurately. That's the first one. And to me, I love colors. I love strong color contrasts. I love when there's yellows and blues. I like it a lot to show all of them. So it's another thing you have in mind. Now, this is a food truck, so look. It's the right side of the painting. We did the whole tunneling the vision of the viewer. This, to me, is vague details. This is where I'm almost shutting my brain completely and just putting in what I see as I see it in a very almost abstract manner. All I care about is this is an orange element, and I'm going to connect it to the wall behind it of the buildings because I want to start establishing those buildings. They're quite important. You'll see in a second. And I'm working bottom to top, by the way, which is usually not recommended in watercolor, but you can get anything to work. Because There are no rules. That's the thing to remember. There are no rules. Rules are meant to keep you average, basically. They're meant to give you a framework to work with, but you'll never reach your ultimate potential just following rules. And it's not to be a rebel that you break the rules. It's none of that. It's because rules are a limitation. At the end of the day, if you follow a rule, you limit what could have been. And if you discard all the rules, you don't limit what could have been. Now, when you discard all the rules, you discard everything you know, and you also discard the promised result that the rule would have provided you. What often happens, when I was first inspired by Alvaro Castanet to paint, I changed the whole way I painted. I went far looser. And so if I was a level 5 or 4 before that, I instantly became a 2 at the new approach I was testing out. It was rough. I think I have a couple of the old paintings I can show you in a chance. When I get the chance, I'll make a video on it. It was rough. It was really bad. I became a 2 out of 10. And then with time, you learn, you get accustomed to, you develop your vision, etc., etc., etc. You become a 5 again, you become a 6, you become a 7. So this is why when I tell you, and when anyone tells you, by the way, I'm blending it with the smoke here. Okay, I'm pre-wetting and I'm putting in darks. When anyone tells you, just go with your gut, just go with your instincts, paint what you want, how you want. I know it is perceived often as easy for you to say, you've been doing this for a while, it's your experience that does it. But again, in my experience, it's actually the ability to follow your instinct that improves with time, not the fact that you've developed something over time. It's so difficult to put in words, but you'll feel it when you're there. You'll make a painting that is levels beyond your current level with no real hard work or lots of practice. It will just happen. And it's really something that once you experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I get the feeling of it's easy for you to say, you've been painting for years. In retrospect, you understand it's not the years that shaped your art. It's a couple of moments of insight. And this is why it also hurts so much, because you understand how long you've wasted your time with things that did not move the needle at all. Sometimes you just have to do it in order to understand it, which is fine. Life lessons learned with pain often, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea of breaking the rules, it's not to be a rebel. It's not to sound cool. There is actually a real logic behind it. I look for the practical stuff, always. So if I'm telling you this, it's probably because I found it to be practical, not because I'm trying to sound smart or anything like that. I painted the ground. It's going to look right, but I'm then going to go over it later again. It's going to be too dark. Okay, so right now the ground's value is pretty good. I shouldn't have gone over it again. What I should have done, notice the color. I used a bit of a violet for the ground. Now compare the color I have to the reference photo. Not that I'm trying to recreate it one for one, but the ground is warm. I messed it up. I missed it. And this breaks a lot of the impression. It's one of those things that just, when you get accustomed to seeing it, you'll see it. It breaks the impression because everything is like in the right context, but then the ground is like, it's cool. It's too cool. We'll fix it. It's fixable. With a thin glaze, you can fix it. You can make it look better. And you'll see me doing it later on. So again, whatever mistake you make, and now we're halfway through the process, right? Earlier, we were like 10 minutes into the process. Even at this stage where we have a lot on paper, a lot of the things are fixable. A lot of the things you can very easily push in the right direction. In fact, I'm now starting to add a couple of more small details. And what I have right now in my brush is a little warmer, a touch warmer from what I had earlier. Now, as long as the ground is perceived as light, these little touches I'm doing, it doesn't have to be accurate, okay? I just try not to have too many white gaps, but even if you have white gaps, that's fine. What you want to make sure is just that it feels like a shape, right? Because I want to tell that story. If I would wanted to tell a story that's different, it won't matter. But because I want to show this is a shape, it's important to be perceived as a shape. And often what ruins a watercolor, I'm going to talk about, by the way, I didn't even talk about it. I'm starting to write a watercolor book, like an actual how-to book. It's going to be a mix of how-to and philosophy, but it's going to be a how-to on watercolor. In a way, you'll see. But something I talk about there is one thing that destroys a painting. And one thing that destroys a painting is lack of clarity. And it's not because there's lack of clarity, it's because the lack of clarity is a byproduct of an artist who hasn't yet polished their work. And a lot of my paintings are destroyed by that. It's almost like a simple painting that is seemingly easier to paint, but the impression is clear, is better than a very ambitious painting that's messy. And there's a certain type of mess, right? There's certain types of mess that work, and I'll be the last person to tell you don't go for an ambitious scene. I'm all for it. I think it's a way to level up your skills and to level up just your results automatically without doing anything. But there is something to clarity. And if you convey things with clarity, it will look really good for the viewer, which is also why so often when I'm sent paintings, the big mistake, if there is a mistake that I see, is the contrast hasn't been pushed enough. So it all looks like a gray mess and everything merges together because you haven't established proper contrast. There isn't a clear shape and another clear shape and another clear shape, so the story is unclear. That's what I find in my experience. So right now we're at a stage where if I were to stop now, some areas are clearly indicated, but others are messy. Others require a bit more work. Okay. Now, one thing to note is I've made a similar mistake here with the smoke. It should be warmer, more neutral rather, like the ground. You see, there is this tendency, it seems for me now, when I look at the process, to use a lot of violet and to perceive things possibly as a violet where they're actually a gray or a warm even. That's something I'm going to make a mental note for. This is one more thing that really helped me advance in watercolor, just filming and seeing myself painting, seeing all the mistakes, all the bad timing, it's an interesting way of growing your skills. I haven't done it to grow my skills. I've done it just because I really enjoy sharing the art. And yeah, by the way, let me know in a comment below if you like this kind of a long format, because this video is going to be long. It's like an hour and 15 minutes. My apologies. I am curious though, because I know there's a subsection of the audience that does enjoy just give me the pure how-to, uncut, full video, don't cut anything. But then a lot of people won't sit down to watch a long video. So I look at the views as an indication, but quality feedback is also important, not just quantity. So let me know if you'd like more of these. I've gone through a long time period where I've been doing just short, snappy, for beginner videos. You've seen me do a lot of that. By the way, we're going to start adding some interest here with oranges and reds and yellows in a couple of moments. This is just this little cone there. There's a lot of these in New York. I love them. They're like a trademark of the city in a way. Not a trademark. I forgot the word for it. Hallmark? Maybe hallmark of the city. So yeah, let me know if you want more of these longer processes. I definitely will also do more of the snappy ones, 15 minutes, just showing one technique, one approach, one process, one quick process. But to be honest with you, and by the way, thank you for watching so far into the video. The way I think about my content is it's very hard for me to do something I don't enjoy. So I usually end up just doing what's on my mind. So if a lot of simple, direct techniques are on my mind, that's what I'm going to do. And if, on the other hand, I'm in the mood for a really long, sink your teeth into kind of a long process, I'll do that. But what I can do is go more with the flow. So when I have the mood for a specific type of painting, I can definitely go more for that and do more of that. But in any case, yes, I'm always curious to hear your feedback. And we're going to talk about a couple of things you can do to really grow your watercolors next up in the video. Because, I always try to make my content useful. Hopefully, it's also entertaining. But for the most part, I want to make sure that it's not just entertainment. Because a lot of how-tos, not just in art, by the way, a lot of how-tos in even finances and psychology and sports even, they end up almost being entertainment only. Nothing wrong with that, but if I call this a watercolor lesson or a watercolor tutorial, I mean, it has to teach you something. So hopefully I'm able to do that. But let me know in a comment below. I'm always trying to do a healthy mix, but I can just make sure I ride a wave more. One detail I'm very excited about, you'll see in a couple of chunks of steps in this process, is the trees. Not the dark trees from behind everything, but the couple of trees that are very close to us, the viewer. They're more prominent. I think you'll love them. By the way, this is the painting I submitted to AWS. It's right here behind me, Edna. I haven't even thought of pointing at it. Yes. So that's the painting that was in New York, basically. You'll see I'm doing something very fun. I actually learned that from, is it David Parfit, I think? Great painter, very active on Twitter, on X, if you want to check out his work. The way he paints twigs, it's just so fun. So I learned a couple of things from looking at his art, and you'll see me do it here. You don't see me do it this way very often, so I think you'll have fun. Now, I have to do a bit of a promotion run. If you're looking to grow your watercolor skills, to just get to the next level, to let go, to be set free, check out the frustration-free watercolor course, link in the description box below. If you're already there, you want to take things to the next level and paint more realistically, with more emphasis on values, a lot of black and white work, but also some color, check out the Watercolor Realism course. If you're a member of the two and you are stuck, or you want to get feedback on your own paintings, you're not sure why something's not working, I'm going to put a link also probably to this, or email me if I haven't. There are a couple of spots left in this month for critiques. It's a new product I launched. You send me a couple of paintings. I send you a video talking to you like I'm talking to you right now, but it's personal. It's your paintings that I'm critiquing. And I'll tell you what I think is working, what's not working. Same approach. I'm not trying to force upon you my beliefs or anything like that. I want you to develop ultimate freedom, but I'll tell you what maybe is causing things not to work, where maybe the impression was missed. So check that out as well. And if you want to own some of my art, the cheapest way to do that is to get my book, Painting a Masterpiece, on Amazon. But I am working on a new watercolor book, so if you want to stay tuned to that, I'll understand. Last thing I will say, and this is a challenging wash, by the way. Last thing I will say, if you want to grace the walls of your home with my paintings, be sure to check that out. I'll put a link below to the gallery. If there's anything that I paint that you like, you can also just hit me up and ask me about it, like this painting too. If you like something I painted, reach out. Even if it's not in the gallery, maybe it's available. So just let me know. So this is probably one of the most complex washes that I've done in this process, even though there are less specific details within it, because it's relatively dark and it's a large wash. So it's very prone to uneven elements. Now, because it's trees, it's actually fine if it's a little uneven. There's nothing wrong with that, so we're going to play up to that. And I am going to vary it up, but I decided to take a very bold approach with the edges, as you'll notice. I will smoothen them out, but I also didn't try to show every little twig on the edges. I kind of stylized it a bit. I don't know, I just like that. There's an artist, I think, who does that I really appreciate, Junwei Dai. Wonderful painter. I think he's also won an award in the AWS. Great painter. I covered him here in Painting Masters, actually. He has a lot of really smart stylizations that I think also make me think this way. Sometimes, again, clarity of statement. This is the shape. I'm the painter. I'm going to tell you, the viewer, what the shape looks like, right? And just making that decision because something inspires you is going to make it look good. Whereas if you're undecisive and you just kind of yourself and you're not really sure what you're even portraying, the impression can be lost. One more note I wanted to say about the trees, and I see this all the time. Big mistake that painters, aspiring watercolorists make with greens especially, is thinking they're green. If you look at the trees in the reference photo, they are barely a green. They're a brown green. They're almost just a brown. So have that in mind. It depends on the time of year, of course. It depends on the light and shadow conditions. Trees can look very different depending on all of these factors. But what looks really bad sometimes is all the scene kind of looks right, and then the trees are just this jarring, weird, strong green. Again, it can work if done with some expertise, some understanding, but very often it's not, and it breaks the entire impression. So just something to be aware of, questioning our eyes, like, what is this color? What is it? Is it a green? Is it a brown? Is it an orange? I fall for illusions all the time with every painting process. Just like we talked about with that presence of too much purple and violet here. Here I go again, by the way. This wall is gray, and I'm going for a purple. It happens all the time. I'll probably fix some of it in a second, but add a bit more brown, that is. But it happens to me all the time. So even when you've been at it for a decade or so, you still fall for these. Some of it is solved by changing the colors you use, by the way. Some colors just encourage a bit of these biases, while other colors not so much. So if you have just a really strong yellow, and you always paint European cityscapes and old walls that are yellowy, and you have a strong yellow, you'll end up painting them yellow. Whereas if you have another color that's more opaque, by the way, like that wall of the side of the bus, rather, you'll find that you have a much easier time sometimes to portray these details. I'm all for getting a convenience mix, meaning not just a color, a primary color, if you actually have a use for it, right? Whatever it is, no rules. Remember, there are no rules. Anything I tell you is not because of a rule. It's my experience and what works for me. Now, this is a wonderful opportunity to paint this tree where the building is wet on wet. So I'm using very thick paint because the branches are still very visible, right? They're not, I don't want them to blend into the back of the building, and the wash is starting to dry. So I'm using very thick paint, and you can see it on the palette. But the fact that the background, the purpley violet background, is still a little wet, spreads it out ever so slightly, and it puts it in a nicer context, I think, because there is a lot of branches there. There's a lot of details, and it can take away focus from our main focal point, or this more central area of the painting. So just again, while it's still wet, you can do a lot. Not only can you enhance the object you're painting right now, you can also enhance objects that are overlapping or are in front of it. Okay, that's another big thing to have in mind. Now, I'm using a lemon yellow, just a simple, straightforward lemon yellow, I think Daniel Smith, because you can paint with it opaquely over darks. Now, what's going to ultimately happen is it's going to dry, and it's going to dry darker. Okay, it's not going to be as bright as it is now, and we will go back and enhance some of it. Here's me blurring those edges. They're still a little moist, but they're not really wet. But you can still work with them. And by the way, the reason I'm not too worried about them is we're going to have tons of branches and highlights on branches everywhere. It's what I teased earlier. You really want to check that out. It'll happen not in a long time. You'll see. So yeah. Now, okay, let's make this smoke steam into what it actually is. It's a bit more gray. So I'm using white over the paper white because I know that if I spray on it, it's going to spread it out a bit, and then I can mix it with a bit of warms and make it look a lot more neutral, or mix it even just with its environment. So there will be a clear feeling of before and after once this kind of blends into the background. You will see the smoke will look better. Someone who's a total master of it, and I haven't realized it the first time I saw them do it, it was genius, and I was like, what's he doing? Is Alvaro Castanet. He's a master of using these just opaque white, or to spread it out over the painting and break off the tightness of a scene, right? There's so many hard edges. Once you put in some opaque paint and you spread it out with the brush or with a mister sprayer, it just does something interesting. Now, the ground. Remember what I told you, I'm going too dark. This is the wash that changes it all. It goes too dark. It's too dark, it ruined the contrast with the ground. Guess what? We can still fix it. We can fix even a large shape because you can use opaque paint. You can do whatever you want, right? There are no rules. I'm going to warm it up near the bottom, which I actually really like because finally it looks warm there. But I'm going to warm up the whole thing. Don't worry. We're going to warm up this entire wash and the highlights, by the way. I also did some wet and wet for the trees shadows. Not as important right now, but yeah, I'm going to do more of it now. Because the shadows are blurry to begin with, placing them in right now is a smart move. But the thing is, we're going to go over the ground again with some opaque paint. You'll see. Everything is fixable. Everything is just, even just thinking I have to paint only with watercolor is a way of constraining your thought. Because there's value in gouache. So there is no real reason to limit yourself to one media. And I really want you to just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt and just think about it. Okay, just take a couple of days, have it in the back of your mind. Maybe it'll pop later on. What is a reason to stick to just one media? You really think about it. Practically speaking, yes, you practice one media, but what takes precedence? The process and the tools I'm using, or the vision and result I want to achieve? At some point, it all becomes the same. What you care about is achieving your artistic vision. The tool you're using for that, the technique you're using for that, the approach you're using for that is completely irrelevant. When you go past the techniques and the right way of doing things and the process I got used to, or the process I saw someone on YouTube use, you'll really grow. Your art will just jump miles ahead. It'll be amazing. Just a couple of things to have in mind, because these are struggles and things I've gone through, right? And watercolor has been so good to me over the years. I just have been having so much fun. The level of stress or struggle that came from painting is minuscule compared to the pleasure I've gained from it, or the joy I gained from it. Pleasure feels a little cheaper. Pleasure is like eating dessert or something. It's just pure joy, you know? But still, I have had some struggles, so I'm trying to, maybe I can save some years for you of trial and error by maybe encouraging you to try the things that actually work. And there's a lot of things that actually work. It's just that these things are personal and they're different for every person. So now I'm using just more of that designer's gouache to bring out some of the highlights on these beautiful little fences they put around trees in New York. I like these a lot. Sometimes there's flower beds in this little gated fenced area, which I love. And it always says, do not let your dogs poop here, which I totally get. So yeah, and while I have this little bit of a light color, you know how I like to do it. I like to use it in other areas where it's needed. I find that it's very effective to do that, right? You have it in your brush. Why would you clean it off and then go ahead and use a different color? Sorry, I checked something urgent on my phone. There's no need not to make use of it while you're there, okay? Now we're getting it with the tree. That, to me, is one of the coolest parts. I teased it. I told you, keep an eye out. Here's the thing. A lot of it does require a bit of patience. There are a lot of branches. You do want to show all of them? Go ahead and show all of them, right? Again, no rules. It's only a matter of vision. I love how those branches look. I love how they're messy, right? They're closer to us than the trees in the background, obviously. So they're layered on them, and they break the monotony of this area, not only with the darks, but also with the light. That's something you'll notice in a couple of minutes. I'm going to put in a bunch of twigs, a bunch of leaves, not leaves, a bunch of, look at, by the way, the right side, the yellow, you see how it's starting to dry, it goes a little darker, and that's fine. But all of these little branches, you can add as many of them as you want, there's no limitation. You kind of, I find, need the right brush to do that. While I have this paint, I'm using it to paint also the details on that traffic light. Again, it's super effective for me to just use the paint while I have it in my brush. That's something I like doing. But yeah, I love the mess, and I want to convey the mess often in my painting, so you'll see it happening here. And you'll see how challenging it can be sometimes to use opaque paint when you want to get good flow, you know? I think it's easy to sometimes take thick opaque paint and just paint it like you would with, I guess, oils or acrylics. Of course, it's not as flowy, so it can be a challenge too. You have to wet it at least a bit. It's a bit trickier to get flow with it sometimes, as you'll see in a second. Sorry for the shakiness of the table. Now, I'm adding a couple of these street lamps. This is another compositional means. So there's a lot of lines going into the center, And you'll notice there's a lot of, as a result of that, of a perspective, there's a lot of vertical lines, but not a lot of horizontal lines, just for the buildings. So this kind of breaks, again, that little, I don't know if I want to call it monotony. It does kind of break the structure a bit and it looks good. Another, again, someone who's also a master of that is Alvaro Castaneda. He's really good at that. Just breaking off the different shapes there are. If there's a lot of verticals, he adds a lot of horizontals to break that off. One more guy who's genius at that is Qianchong Wei. He's really good. And being mindful of that. To me, it's more like I paint it how I envision it and hope these things connect. He just knows how to do it in a pretty amazing way. Now that I look at the painting, it's very dominated by yellows and violets, where the violets are off balance. I wonder if once I finish warming up everything, it'll look different. We'll have to make a mental note of that and really see if it'll work. One thing that I talked about this before. One thing that still sometimes eludes me is colors. Just having the whole thing work together. And there is a way to have everything work together, and that's by painting large first washes that cover the whole painting with few colors. The thing is, I'm sometimes not inspired to do that, and I don't like skipping the highlights, so I often don't paint that way. It became a crutch at some point. I would just paint that way because I felt like that was the right way. And at some point, I realized it's not necessarily how I always want to paint, right? I have to feel it out on a painting by painting basis. So often you'll see me developing paintings like what you see here. I start from a detail and I try and get that detail to look finalized. And only then I move out from there. And I work in a way that I work on an area, I finish with that. I work on another area instead of doing an underpainting or a first wash that covers the whole thing. Now, again, it's not a matter of right and wrong. Someone like Alvaro Castaneda has very strong first washes where he really establishes stuff. Joseph Zbogich does the same thing. Qianchong Wei works a little different. I noticed that he does work into an area often for a long time until it feels just right. But he's also able to put that in the context of everything else. So to me, I feel like I'm close to mastering working on a small area. I would love to improve my ability to have everything work compositionally after I filled in and moved in between those areas. You get what I mean? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Warming it up. I told you I'm going to warm it up. I'm starting with the highlights, but then I'm going to just use this yellow paint pretty much for, pretty much for everything. I got it sooner rather than later. Sorry, I'm moving from the mic sometimes, so maybe you couldn't hear me right now. Today I have to get a haircut. This warmth really works for me. This pushes it in the right direction for sure. It also darkens it. So that's something, again, got to be mindful of. But I prefer this to what it was earlier. You can even see the wall on the right. It's still a detached gray. It doesn't communicate with the rest of the scene. The wall of the big building, that stone wall that's closer to us, these two, they need a change. So you see, look at what I'm doing here. I'm adding another glaze. I needed to darken it anyway, so I'm darkening it with a warm. Because that's how you do it, especially if you work in multiple washes, thinner washes. As every wash can not only darken, but also push the color in the right direction. And that's why the more timid approach of, and it's not a bad thing, of painting with thin glazes, it can work. And it can really add a lot of control to you, to the way you paint. It can make it so that you have way more control over how things turn out, because every wash, you just push it, you give it a nudge in the right direction. Someone who does this really well is Thierry Duval. He really is a master of just isolating an area and slowly pushing it. Do I have a scratch here? Yeah, I haven't even noticed it. I just now noticed it because of the video. And really pushing it gradually to look right and to be the right color and value. Now back to the branches, which are really fun. We took a bit of a detour there with the ground because it bugged me. I had to warm it up, which happens often. I see a detail I don't like. I have to just do it now and then I continue. So look at what I'm doing here. Just continuous movement with the brush. At some point, I kind of got tired of painting each twig individually, so I'm not even picking up the brush. I'm just going like this, doing scribbles. This is another kind of a thing I just discovered that I like from trial and error, which often happens again. Painting needs to be fun. Painting needs to be joy. Painting, it can be hard, don't get me wrong, it can be frustrating, but at its peak, a painting process should be fun. So if you're torturing yourself painting every twig, maybe there is a practical solution for not having to do that. One, you can decide not to. You can decide just don't paint them. Or in my case, I like the way they look, so I did want to paint them. So the way I decided to do it is this way, just by constantly moving the brush, not lifting it up. And I'm going to do the same for the highlight. And it's going to look fantastic. So this is exactly what I mean when I say find your own solutions, right? Find the things that work for you. I discovered that this lemon yellow I'm using, I really enjoy. I really love doing it wet in wet and getting it to look just bright, right? One of my, I think, best paintings ever, the most perfect one, the one that's on the cover of my book, on the cover of Painting a Masterpiece, that boulevard scene was, I used that paint a lot there, and it really brings out life in it. So yeah, that's at least how I see it. Finding your own ways, making your own mistakes, finding your own unique solutions. To me, that's peak. That's the best thing to aspire to. And whenever I do these videos, my only goal, if I have one, my goal is just to communicate, because I enjoy that aspect, to communicate and show art. But if I had an ulterior motive, is to just get you to do the same. It's just super, discovering your own path. And I love that my painting processes can be a catalyst for that, but at the end of the day, that's all they are. If you're just going to paint like me, it's a good training wheels. You can learn a bit of techniques and how to use the paint, but at some point you have to ditch it. That's something I'm going to talk about in a short video soon too. Just painting your own paintings, owning the complete painting process. Something I'm going to talk about in the book too, by the way. Look at this red, how it brings the red and the yellow we use to darken the bus. It looks so good. This is the stage where we're starting to bring out the brightness in things, right? So you'll see me adding a couple of highlights. I'm using a white gel pen here. This is pretty much the only moment I use it, I think. And for the signature, most of it was done with opaque gouache or watercolor. But yeah, so this bright, just white color, we're going to add some oranges and reds to the bus especially. Once the overall composition is there in place, and I do have some minor fixes still to do, but like what I'm going to do now, I'm pre-wetting the trees to make a stronger contrast with the bus, which now when I look at the process again, I shouldn't have. It's not going to ruin anything, it just wasn't necessary, but whatever. But now is the stage where the overall composition is there. The details are there. So what's left is to bring out the light. And a lot of the lights we still haven't painted. So I'll give you an example. Look in the background. You see all of the traffic lights. You see all the signs. You see a lot of touches, dots of yellow and red especially. Some blues too. I love this stage. This is where you can go a little wild too. If you've established things the way you wanted to, you pretty much can't really do wrong at this stage. It can look overworked to you personally, but people that are going to look at it will love it. That's usually my experience. It's like we're the only ones who think it's overworked often. But yeah, so added a bit more contrast there with the trees. That's fine. It's not really an important part of the painting to me. The most important part is, again, the bus and the cars and the smoke. Steam. That's the most important part. I don't remember if I continue adding to it. I think it's done pretty much. Maybe I'll just spray some more water on it. But at this stage, the painting is pretty much telling you what it needs. And if it tells you it doesn't need anything else, you're done. That's what happened to me very clearly with my Imperial Bar painting number 2, the one I've shown you in the previous video. The big bar scene. It just tells you I'm done. Don't add any more details. You're just gonna destroy it. Here, however, there's a lot we can still add. And if you do a before and after of this, maybe you can just scroll between the 2 points in the video. You'll see it's a big difference. And it gives another thing for the viewer to look at. We kind of got started there with the leaves on the right, but we're going to continue with this. Also, there's a lot of nuances there you see I'm getting right now with the bus that I couldn't earlier because it was too wet or mostly it was too wet, and I couldn't just get these sharp lines to show there properly. So now was the time to fix that. So on to these details I told you about. I have a bit of strong orange there. I don't remember what orange that is. It might be SAA, Society for All Artists watercolors, a great company. It might be their cadmium orange or something like that. But yeah, it looks really good, and it's strong orange. I used it throughout this painting in many places, actually. And then I'm adding these red touches. While I have the red, I can add the traffic lights in the back and just a bunch of details. You can add this red on people too if you want, just to show some, strong skin tones or whatever. You don't have to, but you can, like a highlight on a skin tone. To me, it's too much, it's too unrealistic, so I'm moving on, but I did use it a bit there on the food truck and wherever it feels like it would work, honestly. This is the artistic process, just going with your gut at the end of the day. And even if you look at it from a very technical standpoint, like first you got to master the skills and techniques and whatever. Once you master them, that's the artistic process. That's really the thinking of where to place stuff, how to make things look good. Sometimes I'll put a highlight and I'll erase it. I wouldn't like it. But at the same time that we're doing the street lamps. There's a lot of highlights on those that look really, really good. But one thing that is still not there is the tree branches. These are going to be really strong, punchy highlights that look so good. If you look at the reference photo, actually, you'll zoom in close to above the bus. There's a lot of it going on there. And to me, that's like the final detail that will really bring out whatever's left, whatever's necessary. At the end of the day, for every painting you work on, there is an endless number of possibilities of how to paint. It's never about finding the right one. Never about finding the one possible way of painting something. Never like that. It's usually just carving a path. A path that feels like the path of least resistance to you. That's what it's about. Which is why the best artists, the ones that reach their full potential, also feel different usually from everyone else, because they truly carved a unique path that made their art just be theirs. You can tell immediately it's their art. It's unmistakable. People tell me my art does it for them too. They can tell it's my art unquestionably. I'm too close to the picture, so very often I don't yet see it, but I do get it, right? When I see an old painting of mine, I immediately say, yeah, that's my style. I can kind of see it. But that's what painting is all about. This is what it is. It's about fun. It's about discovery. It's about expressing whatever's on your mind. Even when you do representational work that's supposed to be realistic or close to the subject matter, again, just look at how a seemingly similar scene looks completely different between different artists. There's as many styles and approaches as there are artists. So now, this is the most fun part to me. It's just indicating all of these tree branches and small little highlights that I can just bounce around a painting with, just dance around it. What you'll notice is, to me, the highlights on the trees feel a little like they should be warmer. So let's warm them up and get these highlights to actually look warm. Look warm by adding a bit of that orange. So I'm just using white, same designer's gouache, but I'm having it touch a bit of the orange around it. That's the thing that does the trick. You can use opaque paint, gouache, or watercolor mixed with more transparent wet paint, and you'll get some kind of an in-between, if that makes sense. So the white with the orange will produce a warm color, right? You can purchase an actual like titanium white or buff titanium or the specific opaque paint you need, or you can mix it. You can do whatever you want. This is really about trying it out, experimenting. You experiment with the color, you see what it does when you mix it, right? And then you like it, you use it. You don't like it, you toss it away. Just like I did with that lemon yellow. I found that it's integral for my foliage. I need it, right? I need this lemon yellow because I have a dark background. I'll just do wet and wet with the yellow. Boom, you got leaves. You got leaves that are not overworked, that look good, that flow, that look natural, that work perfectly, right? Someone else wouldn't like this color and wouldn't use it. So it really is about being selfish. Painting for yourself, painting in the most selfish manner you can, because ironically, that's what's going to give the most to everyone else around you. You being selfish and doing things the way you want to do them will lead to the best result you can achieve, which will be the most fun for everyone else watching, right? So if anything, I would love for you to find that most unique path of least resistance that no one else does, that only you can do, right? With time, it develops in a way that only you can do it this way. Look at someone like Mark Foley. He paints so differently from everyone else. Look at someone like Misselbu, right? It's not just the technical proficiency, it's also the understanding. It's also the unique vision. There's a lot that goes into that. Even someone like Thierry Duval, who sticks very close to the reference, very realistic, there's still a very unique look in how he mixes his colors and how he does things. Now we're getting it. Now I got just the right mix, so it's going to stay, it's going to look darker. And also my brush can dance around and leave the paint on paper. It's a bit of a tough balance to get, but once you get it, you'll see it works. One more thing about how I paint these, by the way, leaves and twigs, I am using broken off lines. So I'll pause and change directions abruptly. Or I'll lift just for a second and bring the brush back. The reason I'm doing that is, think about it this way, some twigs obstruct other twigs. So a twig will have a highlight, but then another one will come in the front and break that highlight off. So when you do breaks in your lines, you're actually mimicking that, which is a really fun thing to do. I can do a separate video on that if you want me to. Just know that things go above other things, so doing breaks in your opaque lines also contributes to that. Now, while I have this opaque paint, you know me, I love using it in other places. So the places that need a more gentle highlight, maybe not as strong as the one I had earlier, it looks strong, but it's gonna dry and it's gonna fade away, and it's gonna be just the right level of highlight. Now we still have the elephant in the room, which is the ground. I still haven't lightened it up enough. So let's strengthen the contrast between the people and the ground. So we're gonna, and I'm signing this prematurely, of course. We're gonna make the ground a little lighter, and we're gonna make the people a little darker. Okay. Very often you need to make corrections and fixes really late in the painting, and that is fine. So check it out. I'm mixing this light color for the ground, and I'm painting it like an oil painter would, or an acrylics painter would. I have to skip the shadows, right? We're not used to skipping the shadows in watercolor. We're used to skipping the highlights. We're used to painting the shadows. This is the opposite. And you might discover that it's actually really beneficial to practice painting this way, because it will help you perceive that highlights have shapes too. It's not just a detail to be left behind. It's actually a visible, tangible shape, right? So making it lighter, it makes everything else kind of bounce a little better off it. It gives the bus and the car and the people a stronger meaning. And most importantly, I think it matches my vision more, right? Someone else would have seen the previous step and said, no, that's actually my vision. To me, this was my vision. So I had to execute upon it. And not only that, some areas of the people need to be darker, so we'll probably go ahead and darken those in a couple of seconds. Now notice again, when you use opaque paint this way, it is milkier, it is a bit messier, it takes a bit of time, just like when you first got started with just watercolor. You had a hard time, and maybe you still do. I have a hard time too with these things. Getting an even wash or figuring out how to mix the right consistency. Same goes for opaque paint. It's going to dry darker, not lighter, because it's at its peak visually when it's wet. And when it's wet, it should be light. So when it dries, it goes dark. Unlike colors that are more transparent, you start dark, but they fade lighter. So it's just another fun thing. I think I talked about this in a previous video as well. Some shadows that needed to be darker while we're doing that, increasing the contrast. The shadow on this car, I also kind of fixed the shape. It was a little wonky. These things, increasing the contrast, what ends up happening is you tell a clearer story. Very often beginners miss that contrast. That's the thing they're missing in their art. The painting is flat. I talked about this way earlier in this video. It's really a long video. You're missing the contrast very often. The shapes, I can't read them because everything is the same value. Not to mention the colors are off and blah, blah, blah. You can mess a lot of things, blah, 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 blah. All of those things, you can mess them up. But very often the main thing that ruins it is that nothing pops, you know? And here we're making more things pop. Making the people darker, the bus darker, the shadows darker. Some of them, of course, selectively. And the ground lighter. It needed that. And that is perfectly fine. Some of these other details kind of told me they need darkening as well. But in any case, this is the end result after the opaque paint also has dried a little darker, as I mentioned. This is the final balance. I have been really enjoying this painting process and narrating it for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way to this point, I really appreciate it. Won't take it for granted. It's an hour and 15 minutes long video. It's a lot. So thank you for that. Again, if you want to learn watercolor, there's a lot of courses. I'm going to put the links below. I would be really grateful if you check them out. And if you want to get personal critiques for your paintings, check it out. 5, as of filming this, 5 spots left for May. So we can do that because it takes me time to do these videos too. And lastly, what did I want to say? I don't know. I guess just thank you. And thank you to everyone who supports me over on Patreon. It means a lot to me, and more people join there. I'm super grateful, and there are some exclusive processes coming. So if you join now, you'll get access to a bunch of them, at least 3 or 4 like recent ones. So just a good way of getting more content and getting credits at the end of the videos. So thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.